We are taking this investigation very seriously, very solemnly.
The Democratic Attorney General Kris Mayes publicly confirmed back in August that she's investigating Arizona Republicans' fake elector scheme after the 2020 election. Last week happened to be the 3-year anniversary of the scheme, and there was also a significant development. The architect, Kenneth Chesebro, met with Mayes investigators. Whatever Chesebro told them could turn up the heat here in Arizona. Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is Yvonne Wingett Sanchez of the Washington Post. She's broken every story tracking the fake electors investigation here in Arizona. Welcome to Square Off.
Thanks for having me, Brahm.
And of course, folks know you from your Arizona Republic reporting over many years, so it's really happy to have you on the show. So let's start with Ken Chesebro. Why was he here in Arizona?
So he's been on a roadshow of sorts, going to some of these battleground states that saw the alternate elector plan being employed after former President Donald Trump lost in the 2020 election. There are 6 states, 6 of the 7 battleground states that have investigations underway into the alternate elector strategy. He recently struck a plea deal in Fulton County, where the DA there, Phony had sought charges successfully involving his work on the alternate elector strategy. And he's been, in the days since pleading and offering up additional information about his involvement and his knowledge of post-2020 election efforts from Trump and the campaign. He's been visiting some of these states to try to make clear what his role and his knowledge is of these alternate slate of electors. And you know, there's some speculation about why he might be doing this. We have not had the opportunity yet to talk to him. But we do know from his proffer video in Georgia that he's got a lot of information about, you know, some of these private conversations that took place before December 14th, 2020, when the slate signed their paperwork.
And so he's doing this as part of the plea deal he struck in Fulton County, correct?
Well, this takes it outside of what he agreed to in Fulton, which was pretty much limited to that case there. Since agreeing to plead in Fulton, he has traveled outside of those states. He has spoken to investigators in Nevada. He has talked to investigators in Michigan, and now he's talked to investigators in Arizona. So it sort of goes outside of what he actually agreed to in Fulton.
That's interesting. Now, what can you tell us about his meeting in Arizona this past week?
I cannot yet take you inside that meeting. Folks are being pretty secretive about the type of information that was offered there. What I can say is that there are a lot of questions about Chesebro's knowledge of how things may have played out here on the ground in Arizona, and who he communicated with specifically at the state party, where Kelli Ward, who was then chair of the state party, Greg Safson, who was the executive director of the state party, and others helped implement this strategy in Arizona, along with the party's attorney at the time, Jack Willencheck. My guess is, based on stitching together conversations from a lot of people and going very deeply down the rabbit hole with documents, is that he will be able to offer very specific names and anecdotes about conversations that he had with these individuals that could help Mayes push this investigation forward in a way that perhaps she may not have been able to do without this sort of information.
How significant could he be in helping her just tie a bow on this investigation? Or is there still more digging that needs to happen?
Look, he holds a treasure trove of information about how things played out in Arizona. As you know, your audience knows, a lot of these electors maintain that they have done nothing wrong. They have declined to speak specifically in depth about what their intent was, what their concerns may have been about signing this paperwork, if any. They have been very disciplined about not answering very specific questions, at least from the media standpoint, about how things played out. Chesebro was on the other end of some of those conversations, and I think he can move the ball forward in a very meaningful way. What we know is that, shortly after he testified before a grand jury in Nevada, there were charges, there were indictments brought. He is very clearly, at least prosecutorial team in Arizona hopes he will be able to move it forward. I think it will also be interesting to see if they reach out to Jenna Ellis, who also was involved in Arizona in other post-2020 election efforts, not specifically with the alternate elector investigation, because it's important to remember that the Arizona Attorney General's team is not asking questions about the alternate electors. They are also gathering evidence about the pressure campaign that was placed on key officials in Arizona after Trump's loss, efforts to try to overturn the election results.
And let's just pause for a moment and give folks just a little refresher on the phony elector scheme. 11 people who represented themselves as the, quote, legal voters of Arizona. That's how Kelli Ward tweeted it. They were very public about this. How different is what they did in terms of presenting themselves as the real electors versus what happened in other states? Can you do a compare and contrast on that?
There were other states that were much more secretive in how they went about their efforts. Like, they very deliberately did not want to be seen doing this. There were other instances in which electors were so concerned, Trump electors were so concerned that they decided not to do this, and there were substitutes. But in Arizona, you're right. I mean, they did this out in the open, and that's like one of their big defenses is, if you have conversations with them and some of their allies, they did this in the open. They put out a press release. They put the video out there. It was no secret. But if you listen to, the words of prosecutors like Kris Mayes on the campaign trail, it seems as though, while it might have not been done while it might have been done in, open, broad daylight, it doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't a crime. So I think it's just wait and see.
Interesting. Have any of the fake electors been interviewed yet by Mayes investigators?
I can't speak for all of them. What I can say is that there are a number of electors who have not heard anything from her office. And as a result of that, they maintain that this is a sham investigation, a politically driven investigation. And, one of the questions from them is, look, if she really wanted to know what was happening in those very critical days, why hasn't she asked us for information?
Yeah, although I know, and I think you know too, several have lawyered up. So they're clearly waiting. And I do want to note, and you've reported this, and I've learned this as well, May's office has said they're not going forward unless this case is a slam dunk, correct?
Yep, that's what they say, and I would not expect any sort of action before the end of the year.
And what are the potential crimes they may be investigating?
They range from just like broad conspiracy to fraud to filing of documents with a government entity that contain false information. One of the things that I think is important to also remember about Arizona is, there's like a 7-year statute of limitations, unlike some of these other states where they're up against like a three-year deadline, as in, Nevada. They had to act before December 14th of 2020, and Arizona just, we're not up against that deadline. What we have seen come out of the Arizona Attorney General's office, though, is a desire to send a message before the 2024 election. And so if you're trying to send a message that Arizona is going to take its laws seriously and its elections seriously, and people who violate those laws, whether deliberately or not deliberately, will be held accountable, you would think that we would see some sort of action in the first quarter of the year, perhaps.
First quarter. The investigation's roughly 8 months old, so midpoint, near the end. Sounds like you're saying it's closer to the end than the beginning.
I feel like we're closer to the end than the beginning.
All right. Yvonne Wingett Sanchez, thank you so much for joining us.